This is Neil King for Random Acts of Cartooning, and I'm going to do a convention sketch style of Phoenix today. But first...
Okay, everyone. So the inspiration or an influence for this episode is the time when I feel like Phoenix was really at the top of the characters in the Marvel Universe. This was during that Claremont Byrne run. So there was a story arc where Phoenix became Dark Phoenix eventually. But one of my favorite all-time artists, and I'll do many features with him, is John Byrne. And he's being inked at this point with Terry Austin. And it's the greatest run probably in his many different runs that he's had. But super clean work that you're seeing here. I just love everything about it. The Glynis Wayne coloring, but the super amazing tight images with lots of text, lots of stuff. But these types of images, these raw images of power, but Austin's ability to really make the Byrne figures look just so great. And I'm showing this one a lot because it's before she becomes Dark Phoenix, and it's just such a great character, a super powered telekinetic, I guess. But the Marvel Universe has used this parts of this story in different ways, not the entire thing. But all of Byrne's work back then, just spectacular stuff. But I really love this period too with Austin, and that he would go from images like this or using a zip on this lines to show the difference between the two, bringing your eye closer. But just beautiful stuff, and that eventually the character is, becomes this whole full Dark Phoenix character. And that's really a great story arc, and it's the probably one of the greatest periods in comics history, and to see where all this stuff is going to go. And this is like the big one, but Dark Phoenix becomes like a major part, and but to me it's just that spectacular line art. And look what's going on, how many panels are in each thing. These just guys are in such great form. And the combination of Austin and Byrne, just every part of it. And I could just look at these all the time. They're just, just great feelings of power and the line art. And I just think what he did with this form, look at that hair. Like, there's everything about it. It's just so technically perfect. My style is way more like a Dave Cockrum. But this is really the stuff that I look at all the time, and I find like little parts of his work in mine all the time. But this is the great John Byrne and Terry Austin. And that's the big influence.
Okay, as usual, when you're doing these kind of sketches, you just get your shapes in. So I'm using I think it's an 80-pound watercolor paper. That's what I usually do my sketches on. Just using my typical Ticonderoga multi-purpose, all-purpose pencil. And I'm just blocking in all the shapes. So I am just so used to working in boxes most of the time, because I do a lot of my comic book stuff and my kids' books and all types of picture book things. So I'm used to working within a refined space. So when I have to do sketches like this and just make poses, it is strangely difficult for me in some ways, because I want to be just usually working within a story. But when you're doing something like this, you want to kind of get those proportions in and get all the major kind of work done that's going to make the ink stage a little bit easier. So even as I'm going through this, if it's at a specific convention, sometimes I'll have some type of an image behind. I thought I'd do a little bit of that phoenix blasting image where there's that bird image behind her. I'm not doing the dark phoenix one where that's kind of a maroon type of a color instead of the blue. I mean not the blue, the green, orange, and the yellow kind of thing. So I started off with my pen, but I quickly realized I'm just like, I don't know whether it's going to be thick enough for this whole thing. So I think I just switched out. You can see I'm starting off with some refined line, but then I'm like, maybe I should just go in with my thicker marker. And this is a brush marker, but it's kind of refined. So as you do this kind of a thing, the part about this is it is kind of scary. Like, you're putting, it's small. You could see the size of my hand, and that face is no bigger than just a part of my, like a little bit bigger than my thumbnail. So when you're doing this kind of stuff, you have to be aware that your lines are so important. And for this character, you don't usually see it's just usually the whites of the eyes because she's got this power thing going on. And then again, I try to get some type of emotional stuff going on. So especially for a character like this, I'm really kind of punching it up a little bit, screaming or all that kind of stuff. So I'm just moving through, getting in some varieties of line. When I usually start off, I'll start off with my thinner line. When I have my thicker brush pen, I'm putting in thin and thick lines all the time. But this line, it's supposed to be a brush, but to me it's more like of a pen. And so there's not a lot of variety. But you can, you could put a certain amount of variety in. But the reality is you have to double up those lines if you want to have a thicker and thin line. And that's what I usually do for most of the stuff that I'm working on. You can see I'm trying to kind of moving my way through. Right, so as I go through the figure, now no matter what I do, I have to, there's a pencil line there, but it doesn't mean that that's going to be exactly what I do. Like I'll change that shoulder up a little bit. It's a major kind of foreshortening idea, and you have to simplify it. You don't want to over-render it. When I'm doing these hands, I've done a lot of hands in my life, so I just kind of move it in, and you're seeing a certain amount of the fingers in there. And my style is much more simplified than a lot of different styles when you do these kind of things. But I'm trying to remind myself of where certain things are going to be, and that once I get into the color, it's going to change a lot of stuff because I usually really do some different stuff. So again, I'm making my way through. Here I am at this point, just getting the major shapes in with that clean line. The costume's pretty simple, and I'm sure I've deviated from it into a certain part. Do that kind of Kirby move for metallics. And then as I go through, I'm just trying to say, how much do I need to do with this? She has this symbol there on the chest image. So I'm trying to keep it clean. And again, it's just so tiny, really tiny. And for these kinds of images, I'm just not going to go too deep into making sure that symbol is that much different than what I just did there. So I'm just going to switch over to my brush pen, where I tend to do a lot more with the feeling of the line, where it's got a little bit more of a change in the quality. And as you do this kind of a thing, you're just evolving. To me, this is the job. You go in and you're supposed to add that part to yourself. Like I was saying, there's a little John Byrne in me, but I feel like I'm more of a Dave Cockrum. Cockrum was really great illustrator, but his wasn't as sophisticated, I think, as the Byrne style, especially when Byrne was at this stage of his career. But I loved like all the feeling that that Cockrum could get into his things, and I feel like I'm definitely influenced by him too. So as you can see, I just kind of laid in major, just big strokes, and I'm kind of getting ready to do to get in there with the color. Now, I don't want this to become that kind of dark Phoenix idea, even though you're supposed to look at it as Phoenix and the costume. I'm not trying to make it all light and sunny either, but yeah, like I feel like I've gotten to a certain amount, and then the rest of this will be pulled off by the color.
Hey everyone, as always, I always remind everyone that I am a working cartoonist. So the whole point of doing my episodes is to get everybody to go to my Amazon store and buy a bunch of the books that I make. So I have all kinds of different types of books, whether it's for all ages, like Who Stole All the Heads at the Met, and all kinds of books like this, Snowmen in the Springtime, fun contemplation of what would happen if snowmen survived into the spring. And then these are some older ones that I really think a lot of kids would like. Monsters in the Box. There's 4 different books that are collected in here. You get all this on Amazon. I have all the links in the episode. And as always, I'm here doing my sketches. I do conventions and everything, and I do all kinds of commissions. So these are the kinds of pieces that I do. So always contact me about that, or look for me at some of the local conventions that you're involved in. But make sure you're liking and subscribing.
Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to jump in and get a nice little wash on top of this. It's just semi-moist watercolors, really simple. I try to just lay them in there. Most of the weight is being carried by the line. So when you have that dark of an image, it's usually the thing that that carries the day for this. But I do believe with certain characters too that the full color is really an important part to this. I want to make her not so cartoony flesh, so I'm adding a little more red. And I'll put more value on top of that once I get to the darker values. But when you're going in like this, you just want to stay light. So I tend to do the lightest values first. Her hair is red, so I start off with a value of the red, and I look at it, and I'll be like, well, maybe I can put some yellow in that, and then just bring it down to the darkest areas eventually. But again, with this character, because it's a well-known character, and compared to the other variation of her, where she's much darker looking and her hair is probably darker looking, I kept going back and thinking, I'm going to make this a lighter redhead kind of a thing. So you'll see the red in there, but I'll put some more oranges in so that it's not overwhelming. And again, you can see I've just kind of put some of those lightest values of that, and then I'm just going in with some of the yellows. If you know the costume, the gloves and the long boot things are all yellow, and the belt is yellow. But because the regular part of the costume is green, I'll put the yellow in there too and have a variety of green in it. This is what you do with the watercolors. I'm working on a wet on dry surface too. I didn't wet the surface before I went in, and that's a whole different effect that you can do. But when I do convention sketches, I don't do that. Especially you're turning things around fast, so you're not waiting. You're just doing a wet on dry technique, and you keep the areas wet when you're going in there, that a lighter value, and then it's still wet when you're putting colors on top. So you can see I'm just kind of laying in some of the greens now, and I'll even put some of those greens in some of the oranges too. and because they're so reddish looking, that's where you start walking into the complementary. But this is almost a true analogous color scheme. That's why the costume's so good. It's yellow, orange, and green, and those colors really balance each other. They look beautiful together. And this costume is, I think this is a Dave Cockrum costume that was devised. So he did a lot of really nice things. They're simple. They remind you of some of the Kirby costumes that are so great that people always stick with. But Cockrum did some really good ones. He redid the X-Men in the 70s, mid-70s, late 70s. And this was, I think, one of his costume designs, which really has held up. So now I'm trying to get in there with a little bit of the red and build this up a little bit, a little more contrast. Because again, all this is contrast. And when you're doing a sketch, and usually when I'm at a convention, I don't spend much more than about 20 minutes on each sketch. This is what I try to do, is get a feeling and a real contrast of the figure, so that you're going back and forth and you really get a better sense of what you can do in a short amount of time too with some of these characters. And I'm always doing them in my style, so I feel like I have a semi-realistic style, but a little bit elongated and mannerist style. So even when I'm doing women, I don't think they're necessarily a very classic comic style. At least I don't think so. So here I am. I'm just starting to add some of the blacks now. But again, if this was Dark Phoenix, I would really be going after this character. But I'm kind of just showing a little bit that it's there. And knowing this character, and there are some characters I don't know. If I'm at a convention, I'm not positive of who they are, really, if I didn't read the book or anything like that. So, but my feeling is from my background with this character. So, but I don't want to make her into a really the Dark Phoenix kind of thing. But it should show like the power of the character, and I think by doing it in this respect, you get that sense of it. And I think it's it's a nice kind of finishes for this kind of thing. I think it elevates the drawing too. I think when you're doing this black or gray on top of those colors, those lighter colors, you definitely get a different sense of it. And I think that's what's going on here. Again, now I'm just kind of beefing up that bird-like image in the back. I don't want it to overpower the character in the front. But I'm getting pretty close here. And what I'll try to do probably too is go back in and tighten up some line. Like even after I do these videos, I tend to go back in and maybe tighten some stuff up that I missed. I can see even that I didn't put in the color of the bird insignia on the chest plate thing. So I'm going to have to go in there with that yellow to finish that off. But again, like, it's strange to draw something tiny like this. But that's what it is to be, the whole cartooning thing. You have to realize that all the different types of setups, like whether it's in a box or it's for a cover or it's for just a half-page spread or whatever, you're working within a limited space. So I don't just draw in the middle of a large piece of paper usually. So for me, it is still a struggle to to look at it and be like, oh, is this done or not? So again, I'm going to bump up that line a little bit, and I'm sure even after the video, I will bump it up again just to see what I've got. But you can see it's a little more refined now with that contrast. And I think it's important to have that contrast. And there's parts that I'm just like, oh, could I have done this with that eye? But then it's done, and you got to move on to the next thing that you do. But I'm pretty pleased with this, and it's always fun to draw these kind of things. That's why I do love to go to the conventions to just sit all day or all weekend and draw very crazy sketches for everybody. So again, just wrapping this up. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you're liking and subscribing and sharing my content to build this episode. Thanks. See you soon.